Joining me now, not for the last time. I don't care what he writes about. I'm going to drag his ass back here periodically. He is for another, I don't know, I'm going to ask him about it, several days at least, a beat writer for the New York Knicks, writes for The Athletic. He is going to continue writing for The Athletic in a different capacity, which we're going to get into in a second. I don't know how many times he's been on this podcast, but regular guest, Mike Vorkunov. Hello, sir.
How are you? How's it going?
It's going good.
You left me as a sacrificial lamb to go to Summer League while Team Knicks Film School canceled, probably making the right decision, to be honest.
We could just peel back the curtain. It's fine. So this was originally, I went to my wife and I was like, let's make this a family trip and let's all go together. I have an uncle that lives about a half an hour north of the Strip. So I was like, you and the kids could hang out poolside during the day on the days, when I'm like covering the team. It's going to be like every other day. And then our plan was to rent a car and drive to LA and spend a few days in LA and then fly back home. This was the whole plan. And then the anxiety started to set in on her part. And she's like, I'm going to murder my children. They're going to catch this disease or a new disease that we don't know about yet. And so then it went from her canceling to, we had several conversations and it was like, here we are.
I mean, this is my first trip since March 2020.
Okay.
And I will freely say, I still don't know if I made the right decision to come. Everyone seems super comfortable here. I may be a little more precautious about all these things. And so, it's definitely an interesting trip. I'll say that much.
I mean, it seems like, well, let me ask you, is everybody, all of the usual suspects are there?
Yeah, it seems, listen, I think the NBA has turned out pretty much in full force.
Okay.
In terms of Knicks media, pretty much everyone is here. So yeah, it seems like, I'm the only one who has these apprehensions.
Or maybe you're the only one man enough to admit it. Maybe more like it.
Like you, I have small children, so I'm trying to be super careful here. I'm not trying to bring anything back.
No, for sure. And I get it. And there's, I'm not gonna lie, there's definitely a part of me that wishes I was there, but such is life. We're gonna get to the Knicks in a second. Usually I save the self-promotion stuff for the end, but we're gonna start with it right now because you've earned that and so much more. You are shifting your role at The Athletic, and I just want to pick your brain about it for a minute because it's super interesting to me. First and foremost, all I know is what you tweeted out, which is that you're going to be writing about the business of the NBA. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I think that's kind of a nebulous definition, and I'm really not even sure what the job is going to be yet. But the way I'm the way I'm thinking of is basically I don't know what my official title is, but it's basically like the intersection of money and basketball.
Okay.
At all levels. So, from AAU on up to the NBA. So it's a pretty wide scope. But I think it's gonna be fun. I don't really know what I'm going to do yet. We don't have this position in-house, so I'm starting it from scratch. So it'll be fun building it out just from the ground up and trying to figure out what the hell my job is.
Well, you took away my next question, which was going to be like, how clear of an idea do you have of what this is going to be? But I guess that answers that. Like just knowing you, getting to know you over the last few years, this feels like something that's going to be really in your wheelhouse. Are you just excited to take the road and see where it goes?
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be, covering a team is simple in some ways. Not that covering the Knicks is easy, but you're writing about the Knicks. Every day you wake up, you're like, okay, what Knicks story I'm going to write? Being a national reporter and looking at it from a national perspective there's so many options, right? There's so many possibilities out there. It's an entire new landscape. It's a bunch of new people you have to get to meet. So that's going to be, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. I'm both excited and frightened of messing it up. So we'll see how it goes.
Give me a break. I know you mean that too. That's the funny thing. I know you're genuinely frightened you're going to screw it up, which is amusing to me, but it's fine.
We'll see how it goes. Well, maybe in 2 years in back covering the Knicks. You never know.
Every time I think I'm out, they pull me back in. So, well, actually, so logistically, do you have like a final day? Is it basically this trip and then you're done?
Yeah, pretty much. I think today's the 11th, so like about a week from now, okay. I'm signing off, and then I have to take some parental leave, so I'll be back. And when I'm back in the fall, that's when I get to start in a new job, and go from there. Basically, it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I still want to write about the Knicks from time to time. Like that's a good grounding for me. I know the team, obviously. I know people around the team, so I'm sure maybe I can help contribute in some way to whoever takes over on the beat without getting in their way. So hopefully I can still write about the Knicks from time to time, but especially since, they should be pretty good this upcoming year at the very least. So there should be some stuff that, maybe I can chip in on.
Well, that's a good transition. I agree. I think they're going to be pretty good. So I want to go back to a conversation we had. This was certainly before Leon Rose took over. We were talking about how the Knicks don't really know what they're doing. This is years ago. And Kevin Knox was in the midst of floundering and we didn't know are they trying to develop guys? It's big game hunting and that's it. You've now seen obviously you've seen the entire Leon Rose era from up close. Sitting here right now, do you, as you're about to depart, the beat, how do you think things stand just in comparison to I'm not going to ask you give them an exact ranking, but the league, the landscape pretty well. Do you think the Knicks are sitting pretty? Do you think they're somewhere in that middle ground? Do you still think they're kind of looking up at more well-functioning, well-run organizations? What's your big picture take of where the team's at right now?
I think they're in a good spot. They're definitely in a better position than they were when they took over. The Leon Rose regime took over in March 2020. I think they're I think they're in a good spot because they have kind of put together what I think will probably be a playoff team next year, right? And so that would be 2 straight playoff appearances. I think the big thing for me coming into this offseason to see what they do is I thought that next year's team was at real risk of some regression, right? There's a lot of career best performances last year. And so, you wonder, okay, will Julius Randle be able to replicate what he did? Is RJ Barrett going to be a 40% shooter again from 3? I mean, Nerlens Noel and, Al Burks played pretty well. You can go through it, right? And so they seem to have built in a small, kind of a buffer there against if regression does come with Evan Fournier, with Kemba Walker, obviously, right? Yeah. They added they added Quentin Grimes and Miles McBride, and maybe they'll be good, but they're also rookies, so they're probably not going to be helpful, right? Especially on the Tom Thibodeau coach team, I would assume they don't really add much to next year's team.
If maybe they're playing a ton, something has probably gone awry.
Right. Either they've really hit and this is just the steal of the draft type of situation, or they're in a bad spot. Maybe Grimes gets more minutes than I expect, just because I think they still have some. I think they need more wing depth. Okay. I think he's their 4th wing, if I remember right.
Well, I guess it depends on how you look at quickly, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think of him as a guard, he's kind of between the 1 and the 2. Yeah, if you want to look at it that way. But I mean, you're not going to see him playing, with RJ Barrett on the wing, right? He's 6'3", he's got a 6'8" wingspan, but he's slight. He's defensively, I don't think he can hang, and I don't think Tom Thibodeau would put him in that position. That's not what he looks for in those spots. I think in that way they're fine. For next year, they probably will be a playoff team. I don't know if they'll avoid the play-in tournament. I think, honestly, seeds 5 through 12 in the East, you can just shake them up, and however they end up, I would not be surprised.
I'm with you.
Because I think there's a good amount of depth there. I think in terms of the long-term plan, I still think it's TBD, right? They have a bunch of, kind of guys who are leaving their prime or right in the middle of their prime. And so long-term, I don't know what's there. I think they're still trying to get that guy, that huge star that they're trying to get as their building block, right? Julius Randle is good, but he's not going to be the guy who takes you to the Eastern Conference Finals as the best player on your team. So in that case, it's still TBD. I think, they still are trying to make that next big move to really set them up to be a finals contender, right? And that's still out there. They still need to make that spot. But I think just the ability and the ability to have sustained success, I think, is big for the Knicks. I think that's a core tenet of trying to make them long-term successful, right? Like, I think you only get the star if you can prove like, all right, we've now gone 2, 3, 4 years without being the dysfunctional mess that they were for the 20 years before that. Yeah. So like, that's something they need to prove, right? Like, you're not going to get Damian Lillard. You're not going to get a Bradley Beal. You're not going to get, I don't know who the next, guy who's like, I want out, without like them thinking, okay, this is a place I want to go to because I know they can win and they can do it reliably, and like, it's not going to blow up in my face here, right? Like, that's a key tenet of doing all that. And Brooklyn got to that spot pretty quickly. The Lakers were able to overcome their own dysfunction very quickly because they had a history of doing it. They had a very recent history of doing it, right? Like, the Lakers.
It's nice to be the Lakers.
Yeah, they have LA. They have, but they also, like, their last title was what, 2010?
Yeah.
Right. The Knicks' last title was 1973. Right.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Right. So, they still had Kobe vibes. They're like, there was everything in place there to hold them over through the 3 or 4 or 5 years or whatever it was of like just ugliness. Like, they still had close enough ties to recent success to help them bridge that gap. The Knicks don't have that. So they have to almost build it first to be able to use that as an anchor.
Yeah, it's interesting because you would think that like it just merely like, okay, our job is to be competent. That's easy enough. And yet you wrote a lot in the weeks approaching free agency about how there was going to be a real challenge here to kind of keep the powder dry, so to speak, while at the same time not taking a step back because, that would be really bad. And I've been careful not to try, I think my original grade for their offseason would have probably been like a C+, B-. And then after Kemba and I think after the Julius Randle extension, I would probably up that to like, B+, maybe being generous, like an A-. But I think they've kind of threaded the needle as well as they could have, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, the free agent class this year was like, it wasn't great, right? Like, who are the guys at the top of the market? Lonzo Ball, 4 for 85, DeMar DeRozan. There's no one that like you really want to. Yeah, Lowry, that's right. And I don't think it seemed like he was never coming to the Knicks. I don't think there was anyone that you're like, okay, you just got to sell out to get them. And so the contracts that they have, that now that we know they have team options on the back end for years 3, and then I think Evan Fournier year 4, they're not horrible. They're tradable. They have, the one thing is like, so when the Colin Sexton stuff, all the kind of the reports about the Knicks' interest in them.
What'd you make of that, by the way? Sorry to cut you off. Do you buy that as like a real thing?
Yeah, I do. But I think it was kind of also some gamesmanship going on. Like, okay. I think the Cavs probably wanted to see what the market was for him. But like, if you looked at it, the Knicks, I never saw as viable contenders to get him because what could they trade? They had no contract. Yeah. They had no players that, like can help a team like Cleveland win now that wants to get better for next year. They can only trade rookie year deals. And then Julius Randle, who was not on a rookie year deal. Like, that's no place to be in. Even if you tried to make like an Damian Lillard trade work this summer, right before all these signings, that was gonna be complicated. Either they take them into their cap space, which is fine, but like if you want to make a deal happen and still make some other additions, like in free agency, you had nothing, right? Like, you had nothing to trade. So now they have the flexibility to be able to trade guys next summer if they need to, because they have all these mid-level contracts. They have, Burks and Noel at around $10 million. They have Fournier at around $20 million. Derrick Rose is around $14 million, right? So they have these contracts that you can kind of bundle together at different price points to make a bigger trade work out, which I think is important, right? You need flexibility of all kinds, and they have, if they need to clear up cap space and like get rid of any of those contracts that they signed for whatever reason. They also have the picks, right? That's an asset of its own. You don't just use those to trade away for a player, use those to open up cap space if you need it, right? Like, we've seen that repeatedly over the last few years. That's what teams do. It's like, need to open up $15 million, let's attach a first to it. And the Knicks have a number going forward.
Yeah, they do. And I think it's, again, talk about kicking the can down the road, trading the 19th pick out for a future first. I know that move got like criticized a little bit. The Kemba thing, you broke some news this morning. We're recording this on Wednesday afternoon, that it was indeed a 2-year deal for $16 million. On one hand, the blue and orange colored glasses wearer in me wants to be like, oh my God, Kemba Walker decided to come here for $8 million a year. craziness. We're back. Everybody wants to be a Knick. On the other hand, where else was he going to start in the league where you actually kind of really actually want to start? And he's still getting paid. I read something he gave back about 20 million. So the Knicks aren't quite making him 100% whole, but they're like more or less making him whole. And I guess Oklahoma City is still paying him north of $50 million not to play basketball for the next 2 years. So like, that's not a bad gig, by the way.
I need to get in that industry.
That is the getting paid to not work industry is a good industry to be in. So I'm not going too crazy about it, but I'm curious what you think. Like none of us are you? You're not a doctor. I don't think you're a doctor. Maybe. Are you staying at a holiday?
I got my degree, but it was in Russia, so I don't know what it's.
That's not sure that counts.
I've been administering Sputnik vaccines all over Vegas, so just letting you guys know I'm doing my part.
Thank you for your service. We're not doctors, so we don't know what's going on with the knee. I do think though this has a chance to be really good because like I know you've seen the numbers in the tape. Like he was pretty good last year. I think and I think in terms of what the Knicks need, you witnessed Elfrid Payton run point for this team. Like I think this is going to be a pretty big upgrade. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very high reward, low risk type of contract at the price point that they're at. Look, I think it seemed like he was kind of getting to some level of his all-star self at the end of the year in Boston last year. The numbers were pretty good. I think he was like 38% over the last 15 games from three, something like that, averaging 21 and whatever. I don't know about the medical, right? Like that's the big thing. I don't know what his knees look like. The Celtics weren't playing him on the back end of back-to-backs. I think he played 43 games last year, I want to say. Between him and Derrick Rose, you've got two good knees between them.
Hey, listen, split the 48 minutes between 24 and 24.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I think it's a good deal for the Knicks for sure. For $9 million, like that's a risk we're taking, right? As opposed to $36 million annually. I think maybe I think you shouldn't overlook the injury stuff. Right? Like, I think that is very important. I'd heard and I think other people's reported that when the Thunder got Kemba initially, I think their plan was, let's rehab him and see if they can get another first round pick out of him. So I don't know what it says that they decided to kind of cut bait there and not try to extract more picks out of him. That's, the Sam Presti MO is right.
Yeah.
They got, everyone talks about the Bucks got traded 4 first round picks for Drew Holiday. The Thunder got 3 firsts for Al Horford.
It's
right?
Unbelievable.
So think about that. So we'll see. I don't know. I see the upside for sure. They get the playmaking. They need a guy who can create for himself and create from others and just take so much of that burden off of Julius Randle. And they got that. Fournier a little bit. Now they have Kemba Walker. They have Derrick Rose. They quickly can do a little bit. They really helped that part of themselves. I think that was a key part of what they did this offseason. I wrote about it. Just getting guys who can create, who can pull up, score off the dribble, pull up shooting, all that type of stuff. The injury part is going to be a big part of it. I think, if he's healthy and they get 50 games out of him, I think that's a good contract. If he's not healthy and they get 25 games out of him, right? The cost becomes very low because he's making $9 million annually, but in terms of the actual production, what that they'll miss on can be pretty high.
You mentioned Julius Randle, obviously re-signed for, I think what was widely considered a pretty fair deal. That to me is a little bit more of a sign that okay, there's buy-in here, at least from the guys in the building, which I think I said on a podcast a few days ago, you're not going to get buy-in from guys around the league until you get buy-in from the guys that are here. How big of a deal do you personally make out of him? I mean, $117 is not nothing. It's a lot of money. So so
let's not forget he is guaranteed $106 million, right? He didn't.
It's a good amount.
Take. Look, he buys out the downside risk for himself, right? Injury, him not playing as well as he did the past season. If he repeated the year he had in 2020, 21, he might've been the top free agent on the market potentially, right? If all the other guys opted back in.
Well, depending on what Levine and Beal do, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so there's a possibility he was one of the top 2 or 3 guys for sure. He gets $106 million guaranteed. I forget who reported this, but it seems like the 4th year is a player option.
It's player option, yeah.
So it's the 3-year contract. So essentially 4 years the Knicks have for sure. And then he can hit the market at 30 years old again. So like he gets 100 million guaranteed. It's his first big deal. I understand why he did it. I think for the Knicks, it's great. He's going to be, as of now, I think the 50th highest paid player in 2022.
Which is kind of wild. Great. 8th place MVP. It's just, I mean, I know he's not the 8th best player in the league, but you know.
Yeah. And I listen, that's a great value for them. And it's important. I think it was important for the Knicks to kind of reward their own guys, right? Like that's a big part of, I'm not going to say culture building because I hate that phrase. It's a big part of like having people buy into what you're selling is rewarding them when they perform well, right? Like that's how you build, that's how you can create kind of cynicism down the line, is if you ask them to do things for you and then you don't reward them down the line, right? I think that's probably maybe contributed to why they brought in their own Noel and Alec Burks back, right? They did the things that the Knicks needed, and they said, okay, you guys played well, you bought into our thing, into our system, and here's you getting paid for it, right? Like that's what players want to see, right? Ultimately, they, like anyone else, are looking for money from their employer because they want to be rewarded for their work.
I feel like all these things that we're talking about, like, again, is it a major thing? Is it just like a slight positive? But, you know, you alluded to it before, they're not a punchline anymore, right? Like the one time I was in Vegas, it's like, it was right. Oh my God. It was when the Marcus Morris thing went down where he was supposed to go to the Spurs and then ended up coming to the Knicks. And like, it's just, you know, the Knicks are a punchline, and it's been whatever it's been since the last Vegas Summer League. It's like, at the very least, they've graduated from that. And I think now the next step is there a star that, you know, says, okay, I want to go there. If you had to wager a guess, do you think before this trade deadline, that someone will be like, all right, I want to go there?
Before this trade deadline, I think no. But I think next summer, like, listen, look at the Damian Lillard situation, right? What
do you make of it? You talk to people in Vegas?
Yeah. But like, he basically said, like, look, I want to see the Blazers get better. I want us to become a contender. The Blazers have not done that, right? Like, they have just pretty much brought back, you know, the same team. Like, I don't see how that's, you know, Damian Lillard put down a marker for the Blazers to reach, and I don't think that they will reach it based on the roster that they have now. So I don't see, like, right now, it just seems like it's trending next summer to just Dame asking out, right? Like he's said explicitly what he wants. He could say, I tried, I asked the Blazers to get better. I can, you know, like I wanted them to improve the roster this past season, and they didn't. And so, you know, they lost in the first round again, if that's how that goes, right? And I think if that happens, like, I would not at all be surprised if we see reporting then that says like Damian Lillard's first choice is New York, or like he wants to go to the Knicks, you know. And this is the point that I think is important. It's like they have to have a good year this year too, right? Yes. I think that's why it's important to bring. They did it on kind of good contracts, relatively, is like to have another playoff season, to be able to bank that, to be able to say, okay, like, look, this is a competent organization now that makes the playoffs regularly. You can come here and help us go to the next level. I think that's valuable, right? Like everyone talks about the Nets and like the big transformation that they had, but they made the playoffs, and then KD and Kyrie came, right? They didn't join a 20-win team. They joined a 42-win team that had just gotten to the first round, and they could say, okay, we can take that team to another level. So the Knicks need that. They need to be in that place.
I want to pick your brain, the part of your brain that maybe is going to start to think about the business of the NBA. Because you just brought up Dame. Dame has 4 more years left on his contract, but it might as well be 3 because the last year is a player option. And I'm obviously not the first person to be thinking about this. I feel like it's a conversation point. I'm of the opinion that somebody at some point is going to, whether it's before the qualifying offer comes or like somebody that's like, you know, maybe their extension is like the first year that their extension is kicked in, that we're getting to a place where players, if they're like some player who feels like he's powerful enough, is just going to be like, I don't want to be here anymore. You're going to trade me. Do you think that day is coming? And how do you think that situation would turn out, either just on like a micro scale? And do you think it would have like ramifications for the league at large?
John, I hate to tell you, we've seen it already. Kristaps Porzingis did it.
Yes.
I'm not even being flippant. He did.
People do conveniently kind of. That situation was
in the middle of his 4th year before he was about to hit restricted free agency or sign the qualifying offer. that was a power move. We saw him do it.
Well, so said Steve Mills.
No. I do believe. I mean, he wanted out.
He definitely wanted out.
There's a lot of other things there that are perhaps open to interpretation and spin, let's say. But he did. He didn't want to be in New York, right?
He did not want to be in New York anymore.
He was about to hit his restricted free agent summer, and he said, "Let me out of here." Like, so that was a power move.
I guess let me rephrase that. In a situation where an organization is somewhat desperate to keep a player, as opposed to perhaps an organization who may have already been gently,
I do find the Porzingis thing funny, and our reporter at the time is like, the Knicks had that deal with the Mavs lined up the night before. I get the the 180-degree turn on Porzingis. I see it very frequently on Twitter.
Yeah,
I think that gets lost is that they had the Porzingis deal lined up before he asked to leave.
Yes.
But I get it.
But we digress.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I don't know. I saw the Athletic story on Zion Williamson, right? He doesn't apparently seem to be all 100% happy in New Orleans. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see it at all. I mean, or someone to sign a 5-year max extension in a year and to one out. That's what just happened with Damian Lillard, essentially, right?
Kind of, yeah.
I mean, I think it's really interesting that the NBA for a certain class of players has gotten to an NFL type situation where contracts don't matter. Like contracts were something that teams could choose to get rid of when they wanted to, and now certain players have decided that they're in the same place, and Adam Silver is allowing that to happen. I mean, is
it up to him?
Well, I mean, I don't know. And this is my assumption, but like, I just don't see David Stern letting all these situations play. No, I'm not even kidding. Like,
but it's just the thought of David Stern.
Used to fine players for public trade requests.
Yeah.
And I know the NBA, like, I think they did that to Cantor, if I remember, but like, I just don't see things happening under like David Stern that they do now with Adam Silver. Like, there's a different discussion to have about like, is this actually good for the NBA future and engagement and all these like business, whatever, like, and in terms of player power and, labor power and whatever. But I'm just saying, like, I could see under a different commissioner if they didn't let this happen like that. It seems like it's a choice the NBA has made to allow players to wield their power this way. Right.
I had not thought about that.
That's just a non-value. That's a non-value judgment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see it. Like, Harden demanded out, partied his way out of Houston with two years and an option left, right? Yeah. Like, if Damian Lillard wants out next summer, that's 2 years and an option left. Why couldn't it happen if someone signs? If you're coming off your rookie contract, you sign your 5-year max extension. You have to stay there for a year after you do that. So you stay your 5th year, and then you decide, all right, this is just not for me. You get your bag, right? Yeah. And then you go. Like, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I think that's kind of where we're heading, right? Everyone's pushing their limits a little bit. Anthony Davis made his demand with 1.5 years left, right? And then we've seen that gradually grow out to 2 plus an option. What's the next step? It's going to be 3 years. And after that's going to be 4. Like, I just think that's where it's going. And at some point, it's going to have to be a team that decides they want to say no and ignore it, or if they do it, and then they ignore the player's preference on where do they go. And I think that's a really interesting thing that the NBA has to decide about. I remember talking about this with someone when Andre Iguodala I was talking about this with the NBA exec when Andre
with the Grizzlies
had his holdout. Yeah. And I was told him, I was like, I'm generally a pro player. Like, I think it's important to have strong labor rights. But I do find it interesting that, like, why haven't the Grizzlies just pushed back on Andre Iguodala saying, I'm just not playing for you?
What does that look like, though? Just let's go down this road for a second. So the Grizzlies are like, screw this. Like, what do they start finding him? I guess that's the
yeah. I mean, I think that will be within their rights. Like, I think if someone just doesn't show up to work, right? Like,
you can pay.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, look, we're stop finding you. And there's probably a grievance process that the league and the PA have. And again, I'm not saying that they should do it. I think these are just kind of like bigger questions. I don't even know what the right answer is, but I did.
I don't either. It's interesting
that a team was just like, okay, that's fine. You can sit out. We'll trade you at the deadline to the Heat, and then all the Grizzlies players afterward are like angry at Iguodala, rightfully so, because he decided he was too good to play for.
But I wonder how
they're letting this happen.
I wonder how players around the league Like, I guess it would depend on the player. Iguodala seems like a popular guy. I mean, I don't obviously know, but just like if no, it's like, is the NBA just like a big popularity contest? Like, if it was the wrong player that a team did that to, or a player that was like really well liked or well respected, like would the team then? I guess the team would risk no other or not a lot of free agents coming and taking their money. But I don't know. That's interesting. Yeah.
I think it's just like I mean, I don't see how it changes going forward. And I'm just saying, like, and I don't have a preference here. I just, like, as an observer and as a reporter, I find it really fascinating that the way this is all playing out and where it goes from here.
Yeah, I guess just better to have be an organization where players wanna come play. All right, I promised myself I wasn't going to keep you too long because you have actual stuff to do in Vegas. A couple quick hitters before I get you out of here. This is officially your last.
I have to get a juice, by the way. That's my thing. I have to get a juice before I go to the gym. Yeah, I have to get a juice.
What kind of juice?
I don't know. There's a cold pressed juice place in the hotel. That's my important thing. I keep seeing Amari Stoudemire outside the Starbucks that's right across from the juice place.
What is he doing there? Is he on he's on the Nets coaching staff. I forgot.
I think so. Yeah. I think I try not to eat completely like crap when in Vegas. I think it's important to eat real foods at time to time.
The state like that for me is Texas. I was, for some reason, when I was in law school, I kept getting sent to try a lot of competitions in Texas. And it's like all you want to do after you get back from Texas is eat like a week's worth of salads.
Yeah.
But Vegas is, I guess, pretty close. Okay. Quick hitters, since this, again, your last official podcast in a Knicks beat writer capacity. Favorite player that you've covered with the Knicks?
Oh, favorite player. It's hard to get to know some of the players.
You think?
So, like, this past season, I just met Obi Toppin for the first time.
Yeah.
We didn't even have
secret stuff. I love that.
Yeah,
that was great.
He says he hasn't seen Space Jam 2 yet.
Nor have I, nor will I.
Yeah, I'm not going to see it.
No.
I don't know. I enjoyed covering Indaugas Kuzminskas my first year. That was fun. He's a big Broadway fan. I think he saw like Cats a few times. I saw Cats. I hated it. So I guess we didn't have that in common. I'm trying to think. Marcus
is a good one. Who?
Marcus Morris.
Oh, okay.
Was great to cover. He's always good with the media. Frank Ntilikina, I enjoyed covering him. He was always he was nice. He's very nice, and I thought he was very thoughtful about like his approach, and he would always take time. Like I really enjoyed talking to him, and kind of understanding how he saw the game, and like kind of explained why everyone talked about why he was not aggressive enough. He kind of explained it. It's like it just was not in his nature. And Luke Cornett was always good to talk to.
Yeah.
Mitchell Robinson is, he really blossomed, let's say, over his time in New York from when he got there.
Yeah.
Luckily, the Knicks have not, at least while I was there, have not had too many players that I didn't enjoy covering. There were a few, but there's, for the most part, everyone was pretty good.
I, for one, just the only complaint I ever had, and this is nothing against him, but I could never hear a
Bobby
word.
Portis.
Portis was good.
Yeah.
But I could never hear a word that Julius said until after I played back the recording, because he was kind of a low talker. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
But he's obviously a great guy. Okay. Well, we're a bonus round question. Frank Ntilikina, does he have a relevant moment in the NBA before all is said and done?
What does relevant mean?
Use your own definition.
I think he'll be in the NBA somewhere.
Okay.
I don't know what relevant means, so I'm gonna say no.
Okay.
I still think there are Frank Ntilikina believers out there.
I'm a believer.
Yeah, in the league too, and
But I'm just curious because he hasn't been signed yet. I'm honestly, frankly, I'm a little shocked that no one has signed him, at least to like a 1-year deal or something.
Yeah, I would think he gets a minimum somewhere, maybe like in an organization that has a need and can just put a guy out there who's just a 3-and-D guy. Like essentially that's what he is. He's 3-and-D guy now.
Do you have a favorite story that you've written since you've been writing about the Knicks?
Oh man, favorite story. I really enjoyed the story about the Knicks commute. And,
I remember that. That was great.
Just because I thought it was something I empathize with, which is everyone empathizes with. It's just a crappy commute. And then I got an earful from the Knicks about that.
Oh, did you?
That was a fun one. it's really fun and difficult to do like the Leon Rose, Tom Thibodeau type stories. Mike Miller was good to get to know, not through Mike Miller because the Knicks wouldn't let me talk to him, but it's all the people around them. It's really hard to be creative on that beat just because you have to work so much harder for it, I think, than covering other teams, because the access is just not great. And so you have to do so much scrambling. So like, it's stuff like that. Yeah. Like the commuting story. I thought it was interesting to learn about some of the data science their sports science when Fizdale was there, between the blood testing that they did and the Blu-ray stuff that they did. So like that stuff is interesting to me. It's like, seeing what the Knicks did, that was like, you could just see on a level outside of sports, right? Like we see the incursion of like, biometrics in our life now, in terms of, health science in our life now. And, everyone has a crappy commute that they bitch about. The Knicks were no different. You know what I mean? Like talking to Elfrid Payton, I think it was Elfrid just saying like, yeah, it really sucks going from Manhattan to Westchester, doesn't it? And we're just, both complaining about that. Those are some of my fun, favorite things. And plus it was just fun to write off of games like, the Porzingis return to MSG. That was just a wild, wild night.
Well, I was about to ask you, that was my last question. Do you have a favorite game that you've covered?
I got to say game 1 of the playoffs this past year, just because it was, like, I would say like it hit me a little bit emotionally too, just to be there in the Garden. Like we had 15,000 people in one place again, right? Yeah. Think about that. Like think about how the previous year had gone, and to return to like some sense of normalcy, to have so many people all together again. It was just really fun. It was cool to be there that night. I mean, the Porzingis return to MSG was just like, that was like a wrestling event, basically.
That was wild.
That was just a crazy night. The only comparison I have is when I used to cover the Mets. That was game 3 of the 2015 NLDS, when the Dodgers returned to Citi Field after Chase Utley broke Ruben Tejada's leg.
Oh my God.
That was the amount of like venom and anger. We're the same at Citi Field and at MSG those 2 nights.
All right, one more bonus question. Do you think Kristaps Porzingis reclaims his former glory? Well, this is the last question.
His former glory.
His former glory.
I think actually I do.
Okay.
I think this year was a little hard for him just because from all the returning from injuries. I don't know. I guess a little bit is dependent on the coaching situation and just put him in a good spot. I'm not
Coach Kidd, baby.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest Jason Kidd fan. I don't know if he'll have a coach who maximizes his talent, but I still think there's a way for like Porzingis to be a really good player. Okay. I think it's about the way that you use him and you make up for his strengths. The funny thing about Porzingis is I don't think he was ever as good as everyone thought he was when he was with the Knicks. I think he kind of got some New York hype, and that just kind of, I don't know. I think it made him seem like he was better than he was when it was in New York. And so I think now he seems worse than he actually is in Dallas. And so I think he'll be as good as in New York as he was at some point. To me, it's like the rim protection. He needs to offer the rim protection. That was such a big part of his game in New York. He was a great rim protector.
Oh my God. Yeah. Some of those highlight blocks. I mean, we forget now because we've since had like Mitch, and Mitch has had his fair share, and Nerlens this year, I should say. He had a few nice moments. All right. I have kept you from your juice for long enough.
No. Can I say something before you go? Before you kick me off?
As long as it's not too insulting to me, sure.
No, it's actually not. It's I'm going to be, like I said, I have a week left on the beat, and I'll say this in other places, but I do want to say thank you to everyone that's read and followed all my work in terms of the Knicks covers that I've had. It's been really cool to like just see the community from a firsthand perspective, and just like all the support that our Knicks coverage has had at the Athletic. So I just want to say thanks to everybody. Like I earnestly mean that. You're
pretty universally loved, I think, by Knicks fans. People like, not everybody subscribes to the Athletic, so it's maybe not like, Ian, anybody could read Ian. So maybe it's not like that to that level, but I don't know of anybody that like dislikes Mike Vorkunov or your coverage.
I tried to be not dislikable. That's my whole thing. I just stay for dumb jokes on Twitter. No, but I don't know. I just wanted to, I don't know. I just try not to be an asshole on Twitter. That's my whole thing. That's my whole game.
You're successful at it. And you're also successful at providing just absolute top-notch coverage. No shade against whoever they get to replace you, but they're not going to be as good as you. I will miss.
I don't know about that. We'll
listen, man. I know good fucking writing when I see it, and your writing is the writing is excellent, and also the as I always tell you, and the analysis is excellent. At the very least, I hope they come up with stories half as creative as things like the Knicks commute and like all the other stuff that you've done, because those have been some of my favorites too. Before I let you go, just remind folks at home where they could find you and your stuff.
Yeah. I'm going to lose probably 10,000 Twitter followers as soon as I get off the Knicks beat, but I'm on Twitter and, read The Athletic for all the stuff there. I've still probably got one more story from Summer League that I should write at some point. And, that's it. Hope you guys stay and read the business stuff whenever I transition to that.
Well, I sure will be. That's for sure. All right.